as Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders working at UIC, along with all of you, I think it's important to acknowledge that we are on the original lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. And I thought it might be helpful for some of the staff and faculty here to just do a very brief overview of some programs and then spend as much time having our students share their stories. So I know that you already received, summaries of our programs. So I just wanted to highlight a few things that UIC was the first funded Anapeasy in the Midwest, and now we're one of 5. 3 are in Minnesota and 2 are in Chicago. And I think that's really significant because they are the high populations of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the Midwest. And we are going on our 4th grant, and it's funded some really great programs and enhanced our ability to support our Asian American and Pacific Islander students. I think the biggest highlight I wanted to mention is on our newest grant that just started, we were able to have the provost and chancellor work with us to start a new academic support program for Asian American students. We're also working with Keku, who's on Zoom, as a Pacific Islander student outreach coordinator, because many of our programs serve Asian Americans, but we haven't yet connected as much with Pacific Islander students. And that's something we really want to do more of. I think I'm going to just turn it over briefly to Anna Guevara to highlight what's going on with Global Asian Studies, and then Allison Kong for Asian American Resource and Cultural Center, because the grant has enhanced many programs in those spaces. Let me see. Yeah, so.
Thanks, Karen. I think one of the things that I'd like to highlight for you, and Michael Oliveros alluded to it, is that beginning in fall 2022, we will be launching the Global Asian Studies major, and that is the very first of its kind in the Midwest and Illinois. And I say that in terms of the kind of curriculum that we will be offering, where it connects both Asian American studies and Asian studies as programs of study within one rubric. So we're focusing specifically on kind of the transnational aspects of Asian Americans. And so a lot of, I'm very proud to say that I work with faculty members whose research areas really kind of encompass cutting edge and innovative approaches to studying Asian America in the context of a globalizing world. We have faculty members, for example, who look at, who study Asians who are in Latin America, Koreans in the Middle East. I work on Filipinos who are, in diaspora. And so I think it's a really exciting curriculum, and it's one of the few in the nation that does that kind of focuses on that approach. One of the things that I also just wanted to highlight very briefly, because we have a lot of students here, is that this is a program that that took about 31 years to be exact, to get here. And it's mainly because of student activism. So it began in 1991, where students were pushing for a curriculum that spoke to their lived experiences, and it mirrors the national demand for an ethnic studies curriculum. And so we really owe our program to students, and it is the kind of legacy that we try to sustain and maintain. And Anapeasy has been, really crucial and fundamental in our ability to do that. And so, so I wanted to highlight that for you, because if it weren't for the students, none of us would be here. Actually, my position was created mainly because of student demand. So I've been very, very grateful for that.
Thank you for sharing.
Thanks. Myself as well, I started here as the first director of the Asian American Resource and Cultural Center, and it was students who, really lobbied for it and wrote the first business plan, actually. So I'm going to turn it over to the current assistant director there to just highlight some new news for the center.
Yes, so hello, I'm Allison again. So one of the things, following along with that beautiful introduction to our programs, our space also was started through student activism. And part of the continued support of our students also is that we now have a bigger space, since this has been one of the asks that our students have had for many years, since our original space was too small to hold the students who all wanted to be there. Anna Peasy has helped support us in a lot of really fundamental ways, such as funding staff. We had leadership development programs that we held. Actually, when I was a student, I went to those programs as well. We try to continue on with those. In our old space, we had a space expansion and space enhancements. We have been able to run college day programs for underrepresented high school students around Chicago who may not have necessarily been considering college. Let them know that there are Asian American programs available to them and that there are spaces where they can feel included. It has helped support our Asian American Mentor Program, which is a joint effort between the Global Asian Studies and the Asian American Resource and Cultural Center for incoming freshmen and transfer students. And many of our students here were a part of that mentor program. That also includes mentorship training, on-campus internship credit, partnership with the Global Asian Studies on-campus internships. We've also funded other programs like financial literacy programs for our students and other things like that. So this has been, integral to our success on the campus and being able to provide for our students who have asked for these programs over and over again consistently over the years.
That's great.
Thanks, Allison. Tal and Joy, do you want to add anything briefly?
We have an interest in NAS. We're a fairly small program, been around for over 50 years. The university, again, NAS was also created by student activism, but even though we're the only public institution in Chicago, we don't have a minor or major or anything in Native Studies. We don't have more than one faculty member in Native Studies in the whole university. So it's kind of strange, but we also do a lot of work with Pacific Islanders as well, and sort of building out that overall repertoire. But I do think that the Department of Education requires like a certain amount of Native people to be at an institution before they can fund them, and so I turn Native students away a lot at this institution because we don't have enough to build that momentum. So because we can't get to the 10% of our entire student body to be Native, we can't get those resources from the Department of Education. So I think that Native American and Pacific Islander issues are maybe underemphasized in the programmatic language of the Education Department currently.
And I think I can round out the conversation as we have done programming on campus to celebrate our heritage and culture. And because of our collaboration where it started with ARC back in 2000, and it was also through student advocacy to try to celebrate, and through the Chancellor's Committee on the Status of Asian Americans, they wanted to celebrate here at our institution in April. We just had graduation, and so while nationally it's recognized in May, UIC has celebrated in April with speakers that come to campus, allowing a student planning committee and advisors to allow them to use those leadership skills in event planning and decision making. And so we just closed that out with a wonderful closer where our students and the community come together. And over the past years with the Chancellor's leadership about opening up our campus to the community in Chicago. And so that's what we've been doing with some of our programming. API month was rebranded into a PETA month to include our DESI American students about 2 years ago. And so the Center for Student Involvement includes a number of student organizations where our groups can also program in that month, as well as with the various departments, where we want to highlight our academic partners and the initiatives. And so Anna Peasy has been a part of that as well.
Great.
Do you want to Chancellor's Committee before we turn it to the students?
Yeah, so I'll just say something very briefly. The Chancellor's Committee is one of 6 status committees created by former Chancellor of UIC. And I think it speaks to the university's commitment to addressing issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we've worked with both Global Asian Studies and the NPZ grants in a variety of capacities. I can say personally, as a faculty member who teaches, I've worked with tutors provided by the NPZ grant. And so I think it's just really enhanced the experience of Asian American students here at UIC.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'd love to jump in and start and share your story. I was thinking actually maybe Ina, Michael, or Celeste, you could start because you came in as first year students and as mentees, and then have just been doing great work since then and have been connected with the Asian American
Great session. My name is Celeste. I'm not sure I started at UIC a little bit of time ago. As an undergraduate, I was part of the Asian American Mentor Program freshman year, and actually got in through some of my classmates in my Calc 1 class. I was looking for a space of community, but also a sense of support at UIC. I was one of the first in my family to go to school in the US, so it was a bit of a no man's land for me, essentially. They introduced me to ARC, they introduced me to GLASS, and through that, they introduced me to AMP, which is the Asian American Mentor Program. AMP runs in the fall and in the summer. It's for credit now, but in the past, it was something extracurricular that the students and the past coordinator, Jeff Alton, would basically find a classroom to do and then build a curriculum. The curriculum was student-led, it was student-developed, and we talked about basically any kind of topic that a lot of the students at UIC wanted a space to speak about, but specifically with an Asian American lens as much as possible. The mentors were a part of that. They got trained in the summer. Eventually I became a mentor, and then I became the graduate assistant, and now I'm the program assistant. So there's a good lineage as well to that. And these two can speak to that as well, very much so. And I think the strength of what that is that AMP is so very much student-led that when we do our training, half of the training is literally just curriculum building. What do you guys want to see in the classroom? What do you think the incoming students need to see? What sort of support do you feel like students need at UIC that only US students could be able to bring to the table? And that's kind of been the foundation that has allowed the program to blossom and become what it is right now. At our highest peak, which was pre-COVID, we had around 80, close to 100 students amidst 4 different sections. All of them, really close cohort, very communicative and very open about what they wanted and what they wanted to see on campus. And with that, I'll put that over to the GA and one of our mentors.
Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Ina. If you can't remember how to pronounce it, just think of the animals, hyenas when you see me and go, "Hi, Ina," and you have the whole greeting. I started at UIC in 2015, and my first introduction to UIC and what it means to be a UIC student was actually through an Asian American seminar session held in the summer. And it was led by Jeffrey Alton. So one of the folks that was brought on by Anna Pisi was the first person to welcome me to campus. And that made a huge difference in terms of how I felt as a student at UIC. I came in not having anyone from high school coming with me. I didn't have any support system. And my family had never been to a higher education setting like this. So there was a lot of pressure to do well because I want to make my family proud and help them reach that sort of American dream that they've had for their kids, while also trying to be true to myself and navigate what does it mean to be in higher ed? What are my opportunities? How do I find them? And AMP helped me connect to those things. So throughout my undergraduate program, I connected in my freshman year as an Asian American mentor, program mentee. And those skills that we learned in that space, we learned about communication. What does it mean to ask for consent? What does it mean to talk about mental health and how do you access mental health resources on a campus when oftentimes mental mental health is something that is stigmatized within our culture. So how do we break down those barriers and how do we get comfortable with feeling that discomfort? Those skills came from AMP directly and helped me become a nurse. In my nursing bedside experience, I've been able to connect to students, connect to patients in a way that I wouldn't have been able to had I not had that experience. And AMP also showed me how system level changes impacts how people experience health, how they navigate health literacy, and those different spaces where they need to advocate for themselves. If it hadn't been for AMP, I don't think I would have been comfortable advocating to the level that I can now, because they taught me to be confident. They taught me that my experiences are valid and important, and I didn't necessarily get that before being in that program. And since I'd been practicing bedside, there were some system level changes that I wanted to see happen. So that's what brought me back to school to pursue my master's in public health. And in this space, I actually experienced a form of discrimination, and ARC was the space I went to seek guidance and to seek on next steps for what to do. And having that connection throughout my whole undergraduate and now graduate level experience has been the main part of why I love UIC and why I can say that I'm proud to be from UIC, because I have this space and this network that I don't think other campuses get to have. And it's because of those NPC initiatives that brought this here to us as students.
It's a great start.
Thank you so much, Celeste and Ina, for bringing your stories to the front. Again, my name is Michael. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I actually came to UIC as a transfer student transferring from another college in Chicago. And when I was looking at UIC, I wanted to be extremely deliberate about being able to connect to the communities that I know would be able to support me. I came from a predominantly white conservative institution that was not necessarily supportive of my gender queerness, of me expressing queerness and sexuality, as well as me having conversations about what it meant to be Asian American. So when I came to UIC and I found out that there were not only spaces that tolerated my existence, but celebrated me, it's honestly really exciting to participate and to grow and to develop here where I wasn't able to before. I'm currently a gender women's studies major and a global Asian studies minor, but some folks might be surprised to hear that I'm also pre-med. And the reason why I chose gender women's studies and global Asian studies to pursue my educational degree as opposed to bio or chem is that both of these departments and these fields of study really helped me understand systemic issues. They helped me understand what it really means to care for a patient, not just on the level of anatomy or physiology, but to be able to really care for someone on this holistic level while understanding how different systems impact what health is and what health means to us. I would also very much like to, I will be vulnerable for a moment, and I would very much like to say that the Global Asian Studies Department, as well as ARC and AMP, have truly saved my life. And I don't take that lightly, I don't say that lightly, and I don't mean that in a figurative sense. This past fall, I experienced housing insecurity very, very suddenly, and it's because I was connected to the Asian American Mentorship Program. And it's because I was connected to the Global Asian Studies Program that I have not only been able to continue to pursue my major and hopefully end up with a degree either in the fall or in this upcoming spring, but that I'm able to say that I stand here as a successful student despite financial difficulty, despite housing insecurity, despite mental health stress, because my community was able to lift me up, because I was able to understand these systemic issues that were occurring on very personal and intimate levels in my life.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing all with us. And I am really glad that we are able to be here and you also with us all of this students. So thanks for highlighting what AMP has given you in terms of the pathways that you want to go on. Maybe we could turn to Diana since you're in this corner.
Hello, my name is Dana.
Dana.
That's okay, that's okay. I just like want to be like an advocate for like other areas of where I didn't have the chance to go be a part of like camp and everything, so I was kind of like stuck of like what it means to be like an Asian American like on UIC campus. And going into involvement fair as my freshman year, I really didn't know what to look for. So I guess like what gravitated towards me was and how I joined a Greek and sorority life and fraternity life organization. And they really do like strive for kind of showcasing like your pride and your heritage. And I really do resonate with that because in high school, I felt like I didn't really get to see fully like my potential and like what I can do with like not only myself as an Asian American, but also like what, cause like there was like, I'm Vietnamese American and I didn't know how to like, I didn't know how to, let's say, just be proud of my heritage. So when I came over here to University of Illinois Chicago, I really did resonate with VSA, which is also another organization here, and it's a Vietnamese Student Association. And I had the proud opportunity to be a part of their convention. It's been on hold for about 2 years now, only because of the pandemic. But I've never been like more proud to be Vietnamese American because it really does like show that you can have like connections across the nation and even in the Midwest. So yeah, just to be a part of that under like our umbrella of like, oh, you know, like there's more to finding out about like your Asian American heritage and like just having a conversation just about not even like who you are, but like where you came from is actually just like a really good space to also have too.
Thanks so much for sharing. It's really great to hear that joining a student org on campus also connects you nationally with other students across the country. I wanted to maybe turn it over to Keiko because Keiko very much wants to start a Pacific Islander student organization. So, you know, I think it shows some potential of what could happen. You want to share your story and what you've been working on?
Yes. So my story is, well, kind of new. This is my first year at UIC, so I've had, you know, just like about a year of interacting with the community here, and I realized quite early on that there's no Pacific Islander student organization. Related to PI meetings, meetups, and so anything that's a PI meeting, I'm like, yep, click, let's do that. And then I came across one that had Karen and Chastity on, and I was like the only undergraduate student there. And so we just got to talking, and Karen was like, hey, if you ever wanted a job, you know, you could just email me. You know, and I'm like, I do need a job, yes. And so, yeah, we got meeting and we got talking, and I'm like, yeah, you could do like outreach. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. I do want to do that. And so I started just this spring doing student outreach, and it's honestly just been like an amazing opportunity and something I've like been really excited about because I have been really in search of a community and like support, and I want to be able to like give that support because I'm pretty sure there are like some kids out there who want that or like me that don't know it. And so yeah, I'm currently working on trying to start a student organization by next year, formally by next spring, but I'm going to get things going by next academic term.
Thanks, Keiko. Yeah, it's been really exciting to have you on board as a British student and just doing newsletters and activities and actually connecting with 7 other students who want to start this Pacific Islander student org. So I'm really excited about that. You want to jump in, Chastity?
Yes, absolutely. Again, my name is Chastity. A little bit about my interest in what I want my community to look like. I came from a small town in North Dakota, and then I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and both cities and communities are predominantly white. And then once I got to college, the organizations that I was a part of, which was the Asian American Student Union, didn't leave a lot of room for Pacific Islanders. And I strongly identify with my Native Hawaiian heritage and culture, but I also identify as Japanese and Chinese. So being in those spaces wasn't exactly foreign to me, but I also didn't completely identify with them. So as soon as I got to law school, I wanted to create more of that community for not just for me, but also to help with other Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students, because some of the narratives that I have often heard was that there wasn't enough Native Hawaiian or PI students at the school to provide support for it. And that's a very, it's a logical statement, to have funding, we need students to fund. But I also think that even if there's one student, but now I know there's definitely 2 who thinks it came through. There's definitely enough students here, and I think that we're being overlooked. And since joining USC, I had a lot of spaces. I joined the PULSA, that's my student organization at the law school, and we did work with art, and we also teamed up with our diversity, equity, and inclusion department, and also just had a lot of conversations with chancellors and provosts about how to make our university and institution more supportive of Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and also Asian American students. And luckily, I have seen that happen, and it looks like everything is on the up and up and positive development. And I can't wait to see what else the university has in store for future students to come.
Thank you so much, Beth. We also, thanks to Tal, were able to connect with a Native Hawaiian faculty member in pharmacy, and she had a workshop where she wanted to, share her pathway and hear from students. So nice. I am really excited to see what's going to happen in the next few years. How about the students on this table here? Genesis or
I can go first. My name is Genesis again, he, him pronouns. I'm a sophomore, incoming sophomore. I very much was part of the COVID group where all of our orientations were online. And I had applied to UIC as sort of something because I wanted to stay close to home. So I was like, okay, I don't really feel comfortable going far away, so let's go to UIC. And UIC does have the name of being the most diverse campuses, but being part of that COVID group, I wasn't able to see that. Going into the orientation with all of the Zoom squares, I was like, what? There's really no diversity, right? But after I'd done orientation, I had gotten an email from AMP and ARC saying, oh, we have this program over the summer. I think we'd be happy for you to join it. And joining AMP, I was not in the state at the time. It was over Zoom, so it still wasn't necessarily the experience that it could have been. Granted, it could have been in person. Obviously, I believe you have in-person programs.
No, we do.
Yeah, but it's still, AMP and ARC have allowed me to really grow as an Asian American. In high school, though it wasn't necessarily, it was very diverse, I was still one of the only Asian Americans at my high school. So it was very isolating to think that, I couldn't talk about my culture because I was the only person that was there to talk about my culture. So AMP and ARC specifically, especially over that Zoom, even though it was over Zoom, each and every person I recognized Michael's face, Celeste's face, it was just very comforting to see that there were other people that looked like me, who had similar experiences to me, and they were able to help me build the confidence to strongly identify and to finally have the courage to say, yes, I am an Asian American, I am Filipino American. So it's very comforting with AMP and ARC. And I do resonate with some of Ina's experiences with, especially AMP allowed us to destigmatize mental health and other problems within the AAPI community, because it very much is a taboo within our community. We don't talk about things like mental health because of our different experiences, but being able to, I know during AMP, they brought in speakers of UIC graduates, and just being able to see that though they have gone through the similar adversities as we do, it is important to talk about these things as members of the AAPI community, because they're very much present. And I'm also part of the speech team here at UIC. And if it wasn't for AMP and it wasn't for ARC, I would not have been able to really use my voice to really advocate for the AAPI community. I had 2 speeches. One of my speeches, I did talk about the stigmatization of mental health within the AAPI community and some solutions that we could prompt in order for us to start to battle these taboos, and also talking about the struggles of being part of the AAPI diaspora and what it means to actually be an Asian American when there's so many people that are part of this specific group. And I think AMP specifically also helped to, even though there are so many people part of this, the AAPI diaspora, we're able to really pinpoint and talk about our own specific struggles and cultures, because it's a space that AMP allowed us to be a part of. So very much I'm grateful for AMP and ARC as it has helped me to really find my voice as an Asian American and to be able to do that on the national level.
Thanks, Jess. I think we're running a little short of time, so I just want to maybe help students keep your story a little bit briefer. I'll turn to Kristen and then over to this side of the room.
My name is Kristen. I'm a doctoral candidate in community psychology. I think maybe I'll talk a little bit about, my role in the project was to support a lot of evaluation work, like how are these programs supporting our students and what are the impacts of them. And through my observations, I really learned that faculty are really involved with and very intimately engaged with students and really interested in their success. And I don't think that's necessarily common all the time in university settings, especially for Asian American faculty to be aware and wanting to work with Asian American students. So as a graduate student, statistically, UIC does have a lot of Asian American graduate students, but that hasn't really necessarily been my personal experience. So I think I had a little bit of yearning for working with faculty members at UIC who were interested and invested in supporting Asian American student success. So I was able to work with professors like, Dr. Karen Su, Mark Martel, and this is why it's really exciting that class is going to be major, because I think it'll really attract other Asian American faculty members. And then also, other graduate students who really want to further research, the research efforts to support students. So not just student support, but also the research to be able to, come up with more best practices, develop more identity-specific ways to support students.
Thanks so much, Kristen. Kristen helped do research assistance for an article on AMP and its impact on STEM students in particular. So I thought that was really exciting. I don't want to leave out the folks on this side of the room. You want to?
Yeah, I can go first. Thank you for coming. Anshu Nidwaneri here, outgoing student body president. As a freshman, I knew that I wanted to get involved and serve the students, but I didn't really know how I was able to do that. And so I took a different lens, a student governance lens. And in the involvement fair, I learned about the undergraduate student government. And so joining my freshman year and throughout my 4 years, I've been able to learn a lot about what student government is and how you're supposed to properly lead and serve students. And what I've learned is that student government is a platform to really empower various students. Obviously, I don't know everything, and I think using this platform to really empower students, giving them a space and a platform to use their own personal experiences and their voices to really inform various groups on campus is really what we've been trying to do this year and in past years. Having been here pre-COVID and having survived the pandemic with all of you, we've seen how the stigmatization of being Asian American has changed over the years, and we've been able to create statements with partnerships of Asian American students, like anti-Asian hate statements, as well as just collaborating with various different organizations to really uplift their student organization missions. And so we work very diligently in partnering and collaborating with various student organizations on campus to really help ensure that their events and their initiatives come to fruition. And we even have a dedicated chair of diversity and inclusion, which we promote them to really work with the various cultural centers on campus. And so I really thank all the students that shared their stories, and I look forward to seeing how student government manifests itself in the future to serve all the different groups on campus and to collaborate with the different cultural centers here on campus.
Great, that's a great segue to the incoming new leaders.
Yeah, so my name is Mohammed. Thank you, Secretary, for coming today. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for having me. So a little bit about myself. I am the son of immigrant parents, just like so many of us here. I've tried my best to kind of live up to what they wanted their kids to do in terms of achieving that American dream, just like so many of us can relate to here. I chose UIC because of its diversity, because of how well it's integrated with neighboring communities, and because to me personally, I'm a lifelong student. It's not exclusive to the classroom. It extends far beyond. I want to be a more well-rounded person. I want to learn more about different people, different communities, and being Asian American myself, an Indian Asian American, I recognize that there's a lot to learn, a lot of work to be done. So when I came to UIC, to me, I always wanted to give and use my platform to give back. And the best way I knew how was through student government. In high school, I was in the congressional debate team, so I wanted to do something political related, and luckily for me, I'm here and I have the opportunity to be the incoming student trustee, and I want to use that platform to really engage with our communities, especially the Asian American community, listen to their concerns, and hopefully be a platform for them to achieve progress as we move towards the next academic year.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, as a reintroduction, my name is Matthew. I'm the incoming student body president. I'm on the same boat cut here with Anshu and Mohammed, and I chose to help serve my community by joining student government. And the great thing about student government is that we have a great history of being involved in our communities and helping them with their initiatives. When looking back in our student government archives, I can see that we've worked closely with the Asian American Cultural Center. And yeah, I hope in the future student government will work even more closely and such.
Thank you.
Well, let me say I really appreciate you taking the time and being honest about some of the stories and challenges that you faced, and talking about finding a space where you're not just tolerated, but you're championed. Michael, I think that is such a powerful way of thinking about it, and finding a way to be proud of your identity. I think that is incredible. So for me, that really helps me go back and talk about why these programs are important and why they're worthy of additional federal support. I also want to say thank you for bringing up the subject of mental health. And, that's something I hear just about every time I talk to a group of students now that, wouldn't have been true in my generation. And, I think it's hard to talk about. It's really important that we talk about it. And I know we're in a difficult time now, and hopefully, it's been a very difficult 2 years. I don't think we can assume that things are going back to normal or these problems are just going to go away. And I think mental health is an area where we really need to focus on meeting people's needs, giving people a lot of different options, making sure that those are available to them, that they're not stigmatized, that people know how to find them. So I really want to say thank you for talking about all of that. And I know when it comes to President Biden, Secretary Cardona, what they talk a lot about the need for a higher education system that doesn't give all of the attention to a small number of places with very large endowments that seem to be in the headlines all the time. Because if we're going to build the kind of country we want, that gives opportunities to everyone, that promotes upward mobility, that promotes equity. It's places like UIC that really are doing that work. And so, when it comes to funding in the American Rescue Plan, the budget this year, Pell Grants, all of those things, ANAPESIs, HSIs, HBCUs, tribally controlled colleges and universities, those are all going to continue to be a priority for this administration when we're trying to think about where to make investments. It's great for me to be able to talk about what I've seen here at UIC and talk about why those resources are so important. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know we hope to talk about PSLF a little bit. Do we still have time for that, or? Something else that, I think was really evident in this conversation was how community-minded you all are, and, the efforts you're making to build your own communities and to serve others, I think is really inspiring and gives me a lot of hope for the future. And one thing that we're trying to do to help is to tackle the issue of student debt. And when President Biden took office, we had this program called Public Service Loan Forgiveness. Only 7,000 people had ever gotten it. And the program was written with pretty broad, sweeping promises. But if you looked at the rules, you had to have the right kind of loan, which most people didn't. You had to be in the right repayment plan, which a lot of people didn't know. If your payment was a few dollars short or a few days late, it didn't count. That was an extra month, but that wasn't communicated very well. So it was just extremely challenging to navigate the program and get the benefits. We're committed to doing whatever we can within the authority we have. A lot of these rules are written by Congress. It will take Congress to fix them. But Secretary Cardona has done a lot of effort to make sure that a lot of those tricks and traps, we give people a second chance. So if you filled out the right form at the right time, we can count the work that you're doing. And we're committed to doing whatever we can going forward to try and make this program much easier to navigate. But I would love to hear, stories of people who have tried to navigate the PSLF program, or even more generally, how people think about student debt in the context of career choices and going into public service.
I'm happy to chime in. My name is Elena. I work at UIC over at the healthcare system doing government relations. I'm an attorney by training. And so I went to law school, and like we heard from a lot of you today, knew I wanted to do something to give back, but I also graduated from law school with a lot of law school debt. I went to a very expensive law school, and the math just didn't make sense in terms of being able to pay off the loans and with this amount of debt. Like there was literally no way to do it. until I started to learn about public service loan forgiveness. This was back in 2010, and it was a very new program. This was before you even filled out an employment certification form. Just kind of crossed your fingers and hoped for the best, which is what I did. But I will admit it caused me a lot of sleepless nights knowing that I had this amount of debt, and what was I going to do, and how was I going to pay it back? Was I going to be able to buy a house? Was I going to be able to have children? How would I be able to navigate this while still doing what I wanted to do, which was work in government? I was an attorney for 5 years in the state of Illinois, and then coming over here and working with the healthcare system and advocating for more funding to help our underserved patients. So as the program evolved, it began to get more formalized. I began to feel better about things. I at least had a paperwork to turn in, so somebody somewhere knew that I was trying to get this forgiveness eventually. And I just happened to be in a position where I lucked out, and there's no other way to describe it. And I did have the right kind of loans, and I did get myself in the right kind of repayment plan. But it just happened to be that I talked to a lot of people at various servicers, and every time I called, I documented it, and then I would call back the next day, and I would see if this person told me the same thing, and I would call back a week later and be like, well, they said I needed to have this drop loans, I need to consolidate my Durlin credits, is that true? And you would hear different things, but I spent 10 years of my life navigating this, and I was very fortunate. I think that I was an attorney. I knew to do that, but still, again, it was very nerve-wracking. It did get better once they started to, keep the payment counts online. I began to feel like, okay, I have a track record of this. And then in April, I didn't make the payment, but I was eligible at 100 because of the COVID forbearance, but I was eligible at 120 payments, so hopefully that paper will be processed soon. But it's a fantastic program, and I think the intent of the program is fantastic. I think with the cost of higher education being what they are today, it is a way for people to be able to pursue public service, to go into these fields and be able to make a difference while still having a manageable way to repay their debt. I think there are lots of opportunities to get word out about the program. I think, not only amongst students, but also amongst employers. And let employers know that this is an opportunity that they can, give to their employees, to be able to pay back their loans and also make it hopefully easier to navigate the system. Because, it still is, I think, tricky to navigate it and figure out. But, overall, I think the intent of the program is there, and it does work. So, I'm here to say I know, until the waiver was announced a few months ago, it was, you couldn't find people, did this exist? Did people actually, eligible to receive this forgiveness? So I think the waiver and the work being done there is very encouraging to see, because you are hearing more and more stories about people being eligible for forgiveness. So it's fantastic, and I do think it's a fantastic opportunity for students.
Anybody else want to share stories about student debt or?
I guess I can share. I don't know. I think that I'm a graduate from UIC. I did take out a number of loans, as well as my parents took out a number of loans on my behalf in order for me to attend college, as well as, I worked throughout college and all of that. I think that's not a very unusual story for UIC students. I didn't come into public service until about 4 or 5 years ago, so I don't necessarily, it's almost 10 years since my graduation, so there were a number of years where I wasn't in public service. I will say that before I heard about the waiver and things like that, there has been a lot of erosion of trust over the public service loan forgiveness. I know NPR put out articles that was saying 99% of people who apply for this don't get their loans forgiven. So talking from personal experience, I think there was a part of me that was like, well, I don't think it's worth it. It seems too complicated to figure out to get my loans forgiven. At this point, thankfully, I'm in a position where I don't have a lot of loans left over, me personally. I don't know if I can say the same for my parents for the loans that they took out for me. But I appreciate that there are changes being made and that there's movement towards fixing the issues that were happening with the public student loan forgiveness. I think personally for me, I didn't do it because it seems like there wouldn't be a payout for me, I guess, in the end. So that's my personal experience with that.
Yeah.
I'll just say something on behalf of the teaching workforce, being from education. As you know, the numbers, the teachers are just leaving the field right now, and we have a huge workforce issue. And I think associated with this is the awareness, that's filling out everything and getting it all done and meeting deadlines, but, are they even aware that they would be eligible for something like this? So I think that's what I'm reading about the changes that are being made is exciting, because I think in the past you're right, it was the reputation and people are like, this is going to be too hard and it's not worth it. So I think there's more hope now. But now how do we educate people that it's different than it's been? And then how do we have navigators that help answer the questions, get people through the process?
Right. So, I wish I could say that an experience where you call multiple times and get told different things was an unusual circumstance, but, we hear that quite a bit, unfortunately. So I think it was a program that was poorly designed and poorly implemented, and there's quite a bit of work to do to straighten it out. And I agree with you, it becomes, a question of trust, and people are making career decisions, relying on this, potentially very, very important for their family's security. And, I've talked to teachers who are like, finally, I can start to save for my kids' college. So, I think, we want to make sure that this is as easy as possible. One thing that we are working on is trying to figure out, you need two kinds of information. You need to know something about their student loan, which we know all about your student loan. And then you need to know something about their employment. And so we're working on, can we partner with states and school districts to just tell us, who's teaching and might be eligible, and can we automate this process? We've done that in some other areas. So when the secretary took office about a year ago, we found there were a bunch of people who were eligible to have their student loan discharged because they were permanently disabled. And we knew that they were permanently disabled because that had been determined by the Social Security Administration. They were getting disability insurance payments. Still, no one had bothered to actually make sure that their student loans got written off. In some cases, we were capturing their disability payments because they were in default, even though the fact that they had those disability payments meant they were eligible to have the student loan discharged. So we've now fixed that. We've discharged 400,000 loans. But, there's just so much to do to sort of make this system something where people get the benefits that that Congress intended. So we're working real hard on it. But it is, it's very gratifying. Now we're up to 750,000 debts that have been canceled.
Amazing.
Those are canceled in their entirety, and there's more coming. So, it really shows, I think, the importance of paying attention to implementation. You don't solve the problem when you pass the law. You really got to make sure that the benefits get people who need it. What else, Marty?
UAC students, faculty, and staff, thank you so much for sharing and being here. Secretary, thank you. We're hearing the students' stories. We appreciate it.
Just the highlight of my day, maybe my week. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Appreciate it.
Also, he was a deputy undersecretary within the Department of Education for that particular administration. The driving force behind a lot of President Obama's higher education policy achievements. So again, just really big heavy answer, and I don't know if you should go ahead and just start with some initial introduction.
Yeah, this is introduction.
Okay, great. Would you like to start?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for meeting with us today. My name is Haley Kaczynski. I attended Northwestern University. I graduated last June, so 2021. And I was involved with our organization and New Votes, which runs out of our Center for Civic Engagement from the time I was a freshman throughout my senior year, working as a fellow to help run the organization. So I'm excited to be here today.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm so glad that you guys are here. And so from a small community college, I'm glad to be here. So I study political science and generally into government. My goal one day is to be president of the United States. And I just involve myself in a lot of student voting activities, particularly student voting, such as like being a part of the director of this committee, working with organizations like League of Women Voters, and just doing tabling events to sort of promote the governor's elections and debates, everything surrounding that issue. Later on in the year.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Caroline Kvaal. I'm a third year at the University of Chicago. I'm a double major in math and economics, and I'm heavily involved in our Institute of Politics. There, I'm one of the co-chairs of our voting ambassador team for You Shed Votes, which is our voting initiative, completely student-led, nonpartisan group on campus.
Hi, thanks again for being able to have this conversation with us. My name is Melody Slaughter. I'm a fourth year public policy student at UIC. I'm involved with the Student Advocacy Coalition here at the Undergraduate Student Government, and I also kind of broke into this realm through Young Infant Schools in Chicago with my involvement here as well.
Hi, I'm sorry for being late. Good times, my name is Brian Tisazawa. I am from Mathematics College, one of the city colleges of Chicago. I also happen to be the president of the Student Government Association, and this is where I was able to engage in civic engagement with our students. I partnered with different organizations, one of them being Chicago Votes, and we invited them to our college to register students, because being the president, I realized most of our younger folks were not really, being part of the political atmosphere, so we figured having the young population register, having students register to vote was a good step to having be part of the conversation. And so that was one of the major stuff we did. We also pushed programs for the vaccine, and so that our students would get vaccinated. So this is just like a few of the activities I've done as the president of the student government.
We should go out to some other organizations here.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead? Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Weinhold. I'm with Northwestern University. I'm an assistant director at our Center for Civic Engagement that oversees our voter engagement programming, among other things.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. My name is Sebastian Rozo. I'm here as co-chair working with Under Secretary Kvaal.
Well, I think I really you put on the Kvaal, Director of Government Relations and Advocacy at UIC.
Hello, everyone. Marty Gutierrez, Senior Director of Government Relations and Advocacy here at UIC.
And I've been thinking for the back, but Melissa Haas, I do federal relations to the University of my system.
So I want to say thank you for taking the time to come. I know you're all very busy. Voting is something that is really important to us in the Biden administration. President Biden signed an executive order asking all the federal agencies to do what we can to promote access to the ballot and voting participation. So our students register to vote and to actually vote. And we'd love to hear what you're doing on your campuses that seems to work, and how you developed your strategies, and what advice you might have for us as we're suggesting best practices for other colleges. So I don't know if we want to go down the road. Maybe you want to start. Okay, good.
So at Northwestern, our main voter program is called Any Votes, and as I mentioned, it runs out of our Center for Civic Engagement. So although we are staffed by students, we do have that administration support and the support from the department. So because of that, the biggest event that we're able to do is during orientation, we set up a full service voter registration booth. So as students are picking up their room keys to get into their dorm rooms, they're then asked, would you like to register to vote? Which is a great way we found just to remind students who are often just turning 18, who are caught up in moving to college and thinking of everything else that registering to vote may not occur to them. They may have moved to a different state. So we offer them all of the resources to change their voter registration. We inform them of their rights now as a student to vote on their campus or at home. And we also inform them about mail-in voting, how to do that. We will set them up and register them for that. So we really make it a part of the college experience, and we help students to see themselves as voters. Because we found that a lot of times college students will think that political messaging is not really targeted to them, or it's often a talking point that college students aren't involved or don't So we really want them to have a stable identity, and that's something that will stick with them for life. And then outside of that, we have a permanent presence on campus, so we make sure that everyone knows where they can find us. We have resources for mailing, getting stamps, getting notarized if you have to, kind of troubleshooting any forms. And then we also, for primary and general elections, we set up in our student center. We set up at different places on campus so that students always know where they can find us. We provide rides to the polls. We are fortunate to have 2 polling locations on campus, and we also have a large presence in student groups and in classes to really encourage faculty and staff to give students the opportunity to vote if it's on a Tuesday in their class, or to provide them with the information just to figure it out. We find that just giving students a piece of paper to think through how am I going to vote, the logistics of it really helps them to get to the polls and ask their friends.
That's great. How many new students take you up on your offer to register them?
We have over a 90% registration rate at Northwestern, and we like to attribute a lot of that to getting students in that first year. We have about 2,000 people in every class who come through.
That's good.
So over at Local Right, like I mentioned earlier, the first initiative that we took was to, we have a long-standing tradition of working with the League of Women Voters to just have a table at the campus center. So as soon as students walk in, we would have a table where we would have laptops and they could register online over there. We also have a paper for them to fill out their information to register by sending an email and getting that approved, and we would also give them a Google sticker. And we would also, for students who are already registered to vote, which it seems like many students were when we talked to the students, it seemed to be that they weren't really informed on all the election days that are coming up, and who's running in the elections, much about the candidates, so we would also get a flyer to inform them of that. And we feel like in that way, students can be more involved with what's going on around them, and to sort of be more enthusiastic or feel a sense of responsibility in that in those issues. Then they can spread the word to other students or family members or friends. So to sort of work off of that, I would also have this tabling event where I would be right outside the cafeteria and let students know about a certain situation going on. I talked about the LaSalle Veterans Home, which was an incident in Chicago, or I'm not sure if it was in Chicago, but basically, there was a lot of COVID cases among veterans where they were put in danger, and so that went on the news, and a lot of people blamed Pritzker for that, and Pritzker had a response to that, and said the situation was handled. So we would give the full story, and we would give both sides of the situation, how Pritzker handled it, and how his criticizers see the situation. And from there, we would that would get students involved in us asking questions to them, seeing what their reactions are to it, and from there we would encourage them to stay tuned with the upcoming debates because this might be an issue that we talk about, and inform them about the upcoming elections, like the midterms and the primaries. From that point, just having that more personal connection, one-to-one connection with the students, especially since it's a closed, a small community college with a small population that goes in person. I felt like that was more effective, especially since I knew a lot of the students. So talking to students and understanding why they weren't so enthusiastic about voting was an advantage that we sort of had, is because a lot of the students know each other and are friends, and from there we could work off of how to get them enthusiastic about it.
Do you spend a lot of time running these tables?
Yeah, this was going on for multiple weeks. Not only the voter registration registration, but also the governor statement we have.
So at the University of Chicago, our approach can be divided into 3 different buckets. So the first bucket is we have an early voting site on campus. It's in the middle of our campus. So for the elections, people can come in. You don't have to be in that ward to be able to vote there. So students who live off campus, they can also vote there in between classes. So that's one of the really great aspects we have to get people actually physically voting, and then in Illinois, state registration. So it kind of works really well on this specific date. Another branch we have is the USHI Votes just passed the USHI Votes Act through student government. So it works to take a holistic approach to kind of getting out the vote. So a couple of provisions in there is the college administrations have to send out multiple mass emails to students to remind them about voting, direct them to USHI Votes, direct them to resources. Another provision is encouraging departments and faculty to allow election day as an excused absence, encouraging faculty and departments to put voting information and voting resources in their syllabi for classes, having stamps readily available both in dorms and main campus areas, and then when students first come to campus, similar to something you have, we also have information. So when they go through campus register for their classes, there's also a tab that they have to go through to check the registration status. It's something called Turbo Vote. So you check your registration status, you can sign up to vote, you can change your address if you're moving. Another thing is we have this, all of our clubs are on this one server, so there's also voting information. As soon as you click on the server, there's like something that pops up about voting information. So the USHI Votes Act really takes a holistic approach, trying to get people from all different levels, from the administration down to students, really involved to help change the culture and to create a culture of voting. Then the third prong we have is a voting, so we have voting ambassadors. So we have, through USHI Votes, we have about 100 voting ambassadors who are trained through USHI Votes, and then they go into the community, and their job is to engage students. So we do similar cabling events like you talked about. We'll do text taking. Next week, we're going to do a voter registration and a pledge to vote day. And so our main kind of goal is to have multiple touch points. Because one of the biggest challenges we found is students don't have the time, or kind of this voting is this very big abstract thing that they don't have the resources to get. And so if they don't have the time and are a little kind of scared about this abstract thing of like voting, they just won't put in an effort and won't do it. And so we're trying to reach students, so whether they're in the dining halls or whether in their dorms or they're walking to class in the quad or kind of see a flyer or walk past our, we have an IOP house, Institute of Politics house. They know where to get their resources. So when they have those 5 minutes, we can be there and help them when they need it then.
And do you think the concern is like the registration process, or is it educating themselves about the candidates, or what is it that makes it seem so overwhelming?
I think it's both. I think so. Our registration numbers, about 70-ish% of the student population are registered to vote, and about like 60% actually turned out to vote. Which is like, if you look at that, the 70 to 60%, that's like a pretty good, but the 70 needs to increase. And so I think beginning is just kind of the registration point. Oh, I moved to a different state. Then what do I do? I think another thing we see a lot is political apathy, and like they're just tired of politics, or we hear a lot of my vote doesn't count. And so I think it's changing kind of that culture and understanding, well, I mean, there's both kind of national elections, but then there's also local elections where like your vote really, really does count because there aren't any. So making sure that people are educated about the different levels and kind of what it means to participate.
Just to kind of bounce off of the last topic that you picked up, which is this whole idea and culture of my vote doesn't count, especially with youth. Something that I would like to bring up is especially for a place as diverse as Chicago and UIC, where we see a lot of minorities and MAP grant recipients, we see voter disillusionment because students are first encountering their first political system once they get to college, right? And there's this gap between higher education and gainful employment, especially for minorities. As we see, especially Black students gain a degree, the racial wealth gap grows exponentially. So they're seeing and experiencing this whole policy fine. And then what happens when you're not? But what I would like to say as far as what our schools are doing well and what UIC is doing well is we have a student advocacy coalition. That's a start. It helps students see that people like me, people like us, can go out to our peers and talk to them on their level and say, hey, I understand, I get it, I'm with you. And, encourage them to vote, but we encourage them to vote by getting civically engaged. And how we do that is, one of the ways is through our lobby day. I was able to get quite a few of our undergraduate student government officers to actually participate in lobby day this year, which was amazing. They're seeing that when they talk to state officials, what I say matters. And when you see that what I say matters, maybe my vote matters too. So then you encourage them to actually go to the polls and go vote because they think that it's going to have a better outcome, that it actually means something. We also have centralized voting for our commuter students especially. They take a lot of time out of their day trying to get to and from campus so they can go vote at SCE. We have events like debates. We just had a Secretary of State candidates forum here that also promotes civic engagement so students can get an opportunity to interact with these officials. They get to have a conversation. They get to say that, hey, you work for me. So what are you going to be doing to ensure that this outcome is realized? Professors like Dick Simpson, they promote civic engagement via extra credit. Like, I remember when I took his political science class, he said, he gave so many extra credit opportunities. He said basically for any event that you were basically involved in on campus, or if you were working the polls, which I always typically do, hey, just take a picture, maybe write a paragraph about how this experience impacted you, and that's going to help your grade. It's about connecting higher education to civic duty. And once again, that comes back to administrators seeing that students' expectations needs to match that higher education experience. It needs to match that gainful employment. It needs to deliver. Otherwise, we're going to school for. It's a great experience, but it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a great experience. And a lot of students don't have that money for that great experience. Just to waste, basically. But yeah, I think we're off to a great start, but I think we can do better.
UIC was recognized for having a very good plan, is that right?
Yes.
So what was the process of putting that plan together?
I'm afraid I wasn't present for those meetings, but I can only tell you about my experience.
That was a multi-year process. So we have a group on campus that we colloquially call the core group, meaning it's split into folks on campus who are most engaged in the civic engagement space. And that plan came together in response to a challenge from Campus Compact, which, as we all know, is a national organization that has over 1,000 colleges and universities that promotes civic and democratic engagement. We UIC joined Campus Compact in 2015, I believe. And in response to their call to put together a civic action plan, we did so for the first time in UIC's history, and democratic engagement was a major part of that plan. That was a lot of discussion, a lot of dialogue, a lot of reaching out to the key folks on campus who work in the space, but really trying to put together something that's actionable. So picking up on what Melanie was saying, we don't want to find this is going to sit on the shelf and gather dust. We're even win an award, and that's great, but it doesn't actually change things on the ground. So as Melanie was saying, I think what is most important to UIC students, staff, and faculty is that they're able to make a connection between their civic engagement at the polling booth or elsewhere and the actual policy outcomes, whether it's increased math funding or whether it's support for mental health care services for university students or whether it's police reform at the university level or whatever the some kind of one-to-one correlation, and we try to enshrine the principles of that plan, so.
That's great. That's great. I think it's really important to have the whole community invested in those projects. You can do much more. It is much more sustainable when you have widespread buy-in.
Okay, from Malcolm X College, fortunately, this is the first time we have a program like this where we are on a voters registration drive. At the beginning, it's we didn't have the engagement that we wanted because we just had a team in services for the Chicago votes, and Jake Gable wasn't there, so we re-strategized. And what we did was that when we have our major events, so let's say we're celebrating Black History Month, or we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and we have those big events where we are giving swag bags, food, and drinks, we will invite Chicago votes, and they will be there, they will be present, and then we have the registration drive, and of course voters registration education as well. And that is what we've been doing for the last couple of months. Same thing we did last week. We had a single-minded celebration, and we knew we would have a large crowd there, so we invited Chicago votes. Hey, come here, we give you a table. We set up all your equipment, and of course, you attract the students and have them register to vote. The biggest issue again remains the lack of engagement at Malcolm X College, and just like the fellow student said, most students believe their votes doesn't matter. They believe it doesn't count, and this is where we try to come in and educate them of how much their vote matters and how much they need to be registered voters. So that is what we're going to push in, making sure most of our students are registered voters.
So, welcome. We're just talking some about what is happening on this campus that is driving voter participation, voter registration. So, if you're willing to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your work.
Hello, my name's Liam John Smith. I'm from Wilbur-Wright College. Daniel's also from Wilbur-Wright, if he's stuck here. I got involved in this compact, which is about, we had a whole mass situation where some security guards were wearing inappropriate kinds of masks, and we had a whole discussion talking about whether we should have an option the extreme where you can just wear anything in the middle where some symbols are banned, or just neutral masks, another extreme option where only black masks, for example, are allowed. I've also seen Daniel encouraging people to vote on campus, giving out for the upcoming election, just letting people know what it's about, so they can become involved.
Is it okay if I add a bit more? But yeah, I like what, I'm so sorry, what's your name from Malcolm X?
Right.
So I like what he said because he did also host some Black History Month and Hispanic Heritage Month events. And what I forgot to mention was that foods and drinks are a huge factor in encouraging students. Just come up to our tables or come to events. Something else that I would also mention from a student from UIC, was this right? Melody. So what Melody said was a lot of the personal pressures that students have surrounding what education is for and what their future lives will be like. There's a lot of pressure that I see in my own community college, which is a majority Hispanic or just majority minority campus. And from my own experience, and also with the students that I talk to, since it's a pretty close community, is that a lot of their parents are immigrants, or perhaps they were kind of just told go through community college, go through focus on your studies and the job that you'll get in the future. And there's a sort of like lack of conversation about their belonging in terms of like their civic engagement and what's going on in their government. And so they kind of just like go along with whatever whatever administration comes around or whatever is happening in Chicago politics, just so long as they are focused on their studies. So that's the sort of sentiment that I got from my own campus. So I'm glad that you guys shared that. Like recollecting my thoughts again. Maybe remember things.
I'm curious about your stories. Like, how did you all decide that this is how you want to spend your time?
So for me personally, I was participating in a different program at Northwestern through the same Center for Civic Engagement called Engage Chicago, where we actually spent the summer living here at UIC in the medical student dorm, so really getting into the city versus being in Evanston. And we were taking classes on civic engagement a few days a week, while also participating in nonprofit internships throughout the city. So I was working at an organization that was doing political organizing, and I was doing a lot of reaching out to people on the phone, talking to them about their own organizing, their own thoughts just around the election. And I thought, this is something I really, really want to do. And then I realized that I knew it was around the same center that I was doing that program for. So I got involved when there were only a few staff members. And I saw the program grow throughout my 4 years to where I was actually employed as a fellow in the program. And we had a master team of students of all ages. We had about 65 when I was a senior who would be reaching out to their fellow students. So it was great.
Who else wanted to jump in?
So when I was a junior in high school, I really started questioning how my experience as a Black woman with a disability who grew up going to a Title I school in a low-income area, how did that fit into greater society? And I only started questioning that because I got an opportunity to do a TED Talk in high school. And so I started asking all these questions to my older brother who went to UIC, and he was very involved. And we started having these great conversations about what it means to be Black in America. And he started taking me to different political events. We went to a judicial forum as soon as I graduated. I believe that was the election for state Supreme Court justice. We made a connection with Jay Epstein, who I was able to use to actually make an event or organize an event my freshman year for my honors class that I took on decarceration in the U.S. And then I started thinking about, well, what does it mean to be Black in higher education, right? And then I also started thinking about mental health in higher education because I had a wake-up call my freshman year. I attempted suicide, so I got involved in mental health advocacy with young invincibles. But as a Black person, you grow up having these conversations in our households about what to do, what not to do in case you encounter the police. My parents always told me how important education was. Again, I'm kind of referencing what I was saying earlier. And my mom would always tell me about the generational trauma she got and how blessed we were. We didn't grow up in her neighborhood. Even though we were telling her to do the gentrification, the same folks were coming to our neighborhood. But it's really just about seeing where I fit in the bigger scheme of things. How can my experiences benefit someone else so they don't have to go through what I did? How can I make sure that schools like mine got the resources they needed to handle students with disabilities? My school humbled the bag on my SAT test scores. They didn't honor my accommodations. So that was me missing my NMSQT, and they said, hey, we're so sorry. We didn't have the teachers didn't have the proper training because we didn't have the funds. But we need experiences like yours so we can go tell people that we need this money for a reason. So it's things like that that really made me question, what is the bigger picture here? And I I know that that also comes back to social mobility. Like my mom had an education. I came from a two-parent household, which isn't typical for growing up in a neighborhood like mine. And I had to realize that even me, I had privilege in my community, and that I wanted to do something with it.
I wouldn't bet against you.
I would go next. I'll just go off to segregation because I'm an immigrant from Nigeria, and prior to getting the root of mathematics, I was told, just go to school, don't worry about American politics and just do it for the Americans. And I did go to school, and that was where I realized that it was huge resources of mathematics that wasn't being utilized by the students. So I said, no, I like politics. I'll go into this and see what I can do to help my fellow students at mathematics college. And part of that was realizing I also had the power to bring external resources to campus. And that was where I started with Chicago Boards. That's what I did on visitors, because I also worked with them. And that was where I brought Chicago Boards. Because people don't want to talk about politics, but again, it's something that's part of our lives. It's something that we all have to talk about at one point in time, and it's always better when you started as a youth, so you understand how the process works. And so that was where I started from, and that was how I got ingrained into the voters registration drive, and making sure my fellow Malcolm X students were registered voters, so that way, when election comes, you don't scrambling to get registered. You just go to the polls and cast a vote. So yeah, that was our started, and it is a relationship that because my tenure as the president has ended, already ends this month, but it's something that I've already put right there and spoken to the incoming people, like this is something you and continue. This is part of our culture going forward. This never existed, but it's something we need to keep pushing because we just need to get the younger folks into this conversation.
I think I can go. So I knew kind of from a young age that I wanted to be an attorney. But I didn't know I wanted to kind of engage in politics. And so the summer after my first year, I actually interned for my congressman in DC. And it was like an amazing experience to be able to, I was remote, but to be able to interact and kind of be where everything's happening. And so then gearing up to the 2020 election, I got very involved with Use Our Votes. And I think one thing that was really powerful was we had to shift everything to online because it was COVID, and so we had a big push for text banking. And so even though we were all very disconnected, we were all online, we weren't in person, I think the kind of feeling the sense of feeling that everyone had for the 2020 election had so much emotion with it, that through text banking and the connections that I made really got me energized to go work in politics. And I think since then, I think a lot of my experience also comes from the fact that I'm a math major and I spend a lot of my time not in politics. And when I'm in my math classes, no one really recognizes this kind of world we have. No one ever talks about the election. When it was election day, there was no mention of it. And I think that's very frequent in a lot of STEM-heavy classes. And I think that's a big problem. It's easy to get sucked up into this world. I do theoretical math, so this kind of theoretical world where the rest doesn't really matter, but that's not true. And so I think making sure that students, regardless of their background, and regardless of what they're going into, have this sense of urgency and understand what it means to participate in democracy, especially as we move forward at this time period is really crucial.
So go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask if I could have something.
Yeah.
Being inspired by hearing you guys, I just think back to, I was 17 in 2016, and I think that was really what inspired me. Seeing a result of an election come out that I felt would impact my life in every way, but that I did not have a say in. So college, I think turning 18 for a lot of people, or for me especially, it's the first time I'm really presented with opportunities, with the resources that come with an institution. It was the first time for me I really felt that I had a voice in a place where I could sit and encourage other students, like everyone sitting with me on this panel, to find their own voices and to appreciate and just see all that we can use that would have around us.
So I was gonna mention from my own story, like I came from like a Hispanic majority neighborhood, and it wasn't even just like majority minority. It was just like 99% Hispanic, and from there the standard was it's like don't cause trouble in class, and then you'll pass your classes. And then I was told by my teachers that I'm gonna go to like big schools and achieve all these things, and I'm gonna succeed, and I'm better than all the students. But then it turns out like I didn't get accepted from any of those like high schools, and just by like miracle, I was able to go to a neighborhood high school in downtown called Lincoln Park. And the thing is, like there, it was a white majority campus, and it was in the neighborhood, so a lot of students already knew each other. And there was a huge disparity between black and white students, and a lot of the white students would tout their high grades and high school test scores, which were far above anything that was ever achieved in my a neighborhood middle school. And so from that, I just felt this idea that I was like predestined to fail, and that I had to purposely keep on failing to fulfill that sort of like prophecy I had for myself. And then I also felt at some point that I was just a burden to my family and to others. And with that came a lot of like depressive thought. But I would involve myself in the debate club, and even though I still had that mentality of just like going there just to sleep and not really do anything, they paired us up for the upcoming tournament with the students who were more experienced with the debate. And from that, the person that I was partnered with, he kept trying to help me out, despite me being somebody who seemed unwilling to learn. And when they actually came to the tournament, I thought to myself that the least I could do for him, because he tried so hard, is that I would try my best. And from that point, that got me into debate and politics and philosophy and psychology. And I still see this sort of problem in the world now, where there's a huge disparity between people who are more like affluent or wealthy or have more opportunities, kind of just keep it to themselves. And so I want to bring that back down to my own community that seems also unwilling to sort of like take opportunities with that we provide within our own community, but also other communities that have more opportunities. And so something that I do see that I'm remembering now is that Liberal Right is like a huge, has a huge engineering program, and a lot of students are in STEM. And so with that comes as what you said, like a lot of students feel like politics or anything going around in the world in terms of like the government doesn't really matter, because they're more so focused on those students. So yeah, it's a great start.
If I may add something to what Daniel.
Yeah.
Daniel said, he mentioned a great point in terms of seeing disparities as a result of wealth. It's all about wealth distribution, and especially for the Black community, this is why we need reparations. We need to see that wealth distribution in order to be able to have more access to opportunities. Now it doesn't end there. We need to see, a holistic change in systems in general, which is why all of us are gathered here today, to talk about how we're intentionally trying to affect that change. But there's only so much you can do without any money.
So if there's something that we could do, leading the federal government to support your efforts, what would be the most important thing for me to take back?
Can you first explain like what are sort of duties or responsibilities or anything that you can do in your capacity?
Great question. At the department, I work with colleges and universities and financial aid programs. We have been reminding colleges of their legal responsibilities to distribute voter registration forms. We have clarified that colleges and universities can use work-study funds to employ students to do non-partisan voter education. I mentioned that we're putting together a toolkit that college leaders can use to think about how to promote voter
participation on campus. And we do have a role of sort of disseminating or highlighting best practices. But I don't mean the question necessarily to be so narrow. I mean, if there's something that we would do to give young people a feeling that there's a stake in their participating or, whatever, however you want to answer the question. Tough question. That's my job to figure out.
I think that, as you mentioned, how schools have to provide the voter registration resources necessary. I think it's important to clarify that I know at Northwestern, at one point, the resources were kind of a stack of paper in an administrative office, and we need more than that. And it's very small things. So college students, the logistics of voting, finding a stamp, finding an envelope, finding a mailbox. When you live in a dorm, when you don't have space, when you have work study, you don't really have those extra funds or time. It's small things like that colleges can very easily provide that help us. So I think having very specific guidelines for colleges along what is working at other schools, what students are saying, and to encourage universities just to really listen to their students, which has been a theme throughout. But I think everyone on the panel has said we are more than willing to say what we want, what we need. We just need people to be able to listen to us and then use the resources that they have to make that happen.
To add on to what Haley was saying, I absolutely agree, but I'm not quite sure whether or not this only sort of following, the government or higher education institutions as far as incentivizing professors to, motivate students or, just put more emphasis on the importance of voting. Even in some public policy classes that I've taken, we don't necessarily talk about even recent news or recent policies that are being passed. It's just, let's get through the syllabus. And policy is about advocacy. You would think that we'd be talking about, what's occurring in our great nation. So it's not even only restricted to STEM majors. And I think that if we can see that happening again in public policy courses, how bad does it force STEM majors? There just needs to be more emphasis placed on civic action and civic duty, because the Constitution was made with the expectation that all of us would be informed. And when we're not, what can you do? Additionally, I think like Haley mentioned, students, a lot of students, especially at UIC, I know most of my friends have mentioned, I have to make time because I have work today and I have a test to study for on top of it. It's hard.
Our state recently passed legislation where we're going to get the day off to vote. So that's going to be really helpful for all of us, But yeah, I agree with you guys. If the administration, the president passing policy or legislation where civics is taught earlier in, grade school, high school, just start talking about it more and educating. So when they get to voting age, they're ready and they know where to go for resources and toolkits and all that kind of stuff to help.
Okay, I took Professor Sean Healy's class my freshman year, and he had talked about, I think, some kind of civic plan that he was working on, and that had been class to get passed to get taught in high schools. But I also found a disconnect with that because I don't remember learning anything about civics in my high school courses. I remember AP European history, AP US history, and I remember that we never really talked about local elections or who our mayor was or who was our state official. And these were things that I only learned because I had a wonderful brother who was having these conversations with me in high school. Otherwise, I wouldn't have learned it until college. So it's not emphasized, before college. And by that time, you're 18. You've gone 18 years without knowing much about who do I go to if my water bill is too high? What election should I be voting for? Who should I be voting for? Or what specific office takes care of this set of needs?
up, the response will be like, oh, just like vote blue in November and everything will be okay, or like vote red in November and everything will be okay. But like people have been doing that, and they did that in 2020 and it like wasn't okay. And so I think there's a messaging portion about that, about connecting what's actually going on to your vote, that I think government at the federal level and then also working with states at the state and local level can use to help connect that. Because I think as college students, we all talked about how not like a connecting point that needs. And I mean, we can all do it individually on our campuses, but it's also something we're all struggling with. And so that's kind of a big question. There's no like silver bullet, but I think messaging around that needs to shift and help the market shift.
So a couple notes that I took. I noticed how the syllabus seems to be like a problem for some students, or for some teachers, where it kind of like seems too strict and there's no room for teachers to talk about elections, especially like the humanities teachers. I see that that's a sort of problem. Is to like the syllabus is restricting for some teachers to get through the coursework through the semester. And also that there's a problem with the qualifications for community college professors specifically, because to be a community college professor, you kind of just like need a master's in whatever degree you're studying in. And so a lot of these teachers are kind of just winging it and testing each semester on like what works and what doesn't work in their classrooms. And a lot of, I even like experienced as a professor, that kind of just like over years was molded to have a really strict syllabus, a really strict way of like preventing students from doing certain things, like we couldn't bring out our laptop to take notes. And it was like a huge lecture class, and the quizzes were based off of memorization, because there was this disparity between students who were interested in history and students who weren't interested in history. And so I think either raising qualifications for community college professors, or just, if that's too much for a community college to handle, because maybe like the resources in terms of like money might be a problem, then probably helping out community colleges in that way would help. Also, registration stations is something that I hear a lot from other universities, but that's not really something that we have been able to invest in much in our community college. And also, sort of like meeting with professors, either in community colleges or in any colleges, and just being transparent with them about what's going on in terms of like the government, state policy, citywide policy, or just federal policy would help a lot with then bringing that back to students, so that they know more about like, what they can tell their students to say, hey, this is what's going on, and your voice matters if you vote in this election. I feel like that would help out as well, and would work well with the sort of syllabus problem that I mentioned earlier. Also, there's lack of student leaders. For what we're right, we're the best that we can, for what we're right, we have a couple of student leaders, but for a lot of other community colleges, there's a huge problem with the amount of like student leaders that they have that are willing to get involved. And I think work study opportunities, or sort of just incentives for students to get involved extracurricularly. Like I know, student government does this thing where if you actually hold office in a position, then your your tuition is paid off. And I don't know, like if your tuition from financial aid would now go to your directly to you or not. I would probably have to investigate there, but some sort of incentive of letting students know that they'll be secure in taking up these extra responsibilities would mean a lot, because personally for me, like being on campus for like 8 hours, it almost like reminds me of like high school or middle school. But like I'm getting off at 6 and then I don't really like have dinner prepared. I'm grateful for my parents who have been able to provide that. But I know a lot of other students don't have that opportunity, and a lot of students' parents like are busy at home, busy away from home. And there's a huge issue with like getting food on campus, particularly for me, but also like with the fact that I can't really afford always buying on campus. So just like taking up extracurricular opportunities is just a huge it's really disincentivized on my campus, and I imagine for maybe some other campuses. Resources for voting information is also something I kind of mentioned earlier, but a problem that I found when I was like tabling for the sort of promoting the governor's election and people tuning in for the debates is that I couldn't really do much research, and I was working with other students. You couldn't really do much research on like what the governor's the people that are running for the governor positions. I didn't really know what their thoughts were on like policies, or if they have proposed policies, or where they even stand on issues sometimes. But also like how even if they do stand on an issue, how would they go about like solving that issue, or what have they done if they were in previous offices? Like I know when I was doing research on Richard Irving, I kind of just like saw generally like articles saying what his positions are on things, but not really like anything he's done or said or proposes. And so I saw that as a huge issue. I feel like there needs to be a lot more transparency and like sort of way in which somebody can go about like talking to those like candidates or getting more a resource like database for community colleges or professors to know more, and so we can have those resources to share on to the students.
I really, really do. I just want to be super conscientious of your time, especially in case you have to catch a flight. And this will go on. It's been really robust. I just want to thank all of our students. It's really inspiring to hear all of you. This gives me a lot of good feelings for the future. And we want to keep this partnership. We're looking forward to the toolkit that you're developing. And so we can continue thinking with that kind of homework and chart that you gave us about how, the department can help further support everything that we're doing internally and building up that infrastructure and interest. So thank you so much. Again, I'm sorry to be the bad guy here.
Yeah, well, thank you for the work you're doing. I do appreciate the specific ideas. And, I think, like you, I really believe in our political process and people's lives better. And I think it is so important that students are hearing it from fellow students. You have that credibility with them that people like me don't have. And, as you said, it's so important to start a foundation of a lifelong habit. People tend to keep doing what they did in their early 20s. So if you get people engaged now, that can pay off for decades to come. So thank you. I do feel better knowing that you all are working hard on this, and whatever we can do to support it, we want to do. So thank you.